All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with the whale capper Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to talk about the American League, second part of our MLB futures preview. We'll talk Cy Young, we'll talk MVP, we'll talk AL Central, which I think is the most vulnerable market to attack on the division front in the AL. We'll talk AL Pennant, and then we'll talk some NBA. And speaking of NBA, Drew, great to have the association back yesterday. The man behind me, Nikola Jokic, put on a clinic. But what I wanted to start off with is James Harden. Last night was phenomenal. And it's ridiculous that he was snubbed for the All-Star game.
Ridiculous.
He's suddenly become the most underrated player in the NBA, I think. It's strange to say about a guy who's come top 2 in MVP 4 times, won it once, has all the statistics that he's put up over the years. I think 3 scoring titles. But yeah, I mean, I can't believe the disdain that man still gets treated with. The fact that Drew Holiday, DeMar DeRozan, Julius Randle all made the All-Star team over James Harden. And he really, I think, was the centerpiece of the game of the night, which was Sixers-Grizzlies, which is the best game regular season-wise that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, the entertainment yesterday was like from the straight through from Fanini, Alcaraz, all the way through to Lakers Warriors. It was just an awesome night of sports. I loved the intensity in both the Cavs Nuggets game and Grizzlies Sixers. Both felt like, oh my gosh, are we watching playoff basketball? Like it was a totally fresh level of effort. You know, the entire the month leading into the All-Star break, watching the NBA felt a little bit like a slog. There weren't very many memorable games. There was a lot of just like, kind of taking care of business and or giving guys nights off. It didn't really feel like there was much at stake. And then last night, it was just high level intensity all across the board. I think you nailed it. The Grizzlies Sixers was the game of the night. Harden was the story out of that game for me. And we came into the season and Harden looked like he was in shape. That was one of the reasons that I think a lot of us were bullish on the Sixers being possible, to steal the 1 seed and kind of put themselves in a decent position in the Eastern Conference. Now, the Celtics came out nuclear hot, and Harden, while in shape through the first part of the season, did deal with a number of injuries. But the fact that he came out of a layoff like the All-Star break and wasn't, kind of typical, don't really care, get James Harden like a little out of shape, a little bit kind of laissez-faire. No, he was razor sharp. He looked like a top 5 player. It was awesome to see it, and you pair him with Embiid Embiid, by the way, wasn't even 100% or anywhere close to that last night, dealing with illness, and it didn't matter. They still beat the Grizzlies. Awesome game, awesome intensity. The last 4 minutes were just, couldn't take your eyes away from it. I mean, credit to the Nuggets as well. Like they, looked like they were in dire straits. Couldn't stop Evan Mobley for a lot of the first 3 quarters, and then Michael Porter Jr. all of a sudden can't miss from 3 in the fourth quarter. They get a couple of defensive stops. Cavs can't make a bucket to save their lives, and the Nuggets steal one in Cleveland. So good job by the kind of teams that really trying to make their statement that, yes, we are contenders for a championship. And I think you clearly have to have the Nuggets and the Sixers in the inner circle there.
Yep. And the thing I loved about Harden's game is that so often at the end of these games, when he would get tired, he just lapses into the step back 3 just over and over again. But last night, he was beating his guys off the dribble. He was passing, finding Tobias Harris open. It was just kind of a summation of what a great season he's having. He's basically 22-11, over 62% true shooting. They're +7 net rating when he's on the floor. Like, he's still one of the 15 best players in the NBA, 20 best at absolute worst. And for me, it's become like a philosophical thing my 2 guys are Harden and Jokic. Right? I think that there is a certain backlash against those guys for reasons that are just insipid for the most part, and criticizing them because they haven't won the finals. Whereas what could Nikola Jokic possibly have done more to try and make it the finals? He hasn't had any teammates the past 2 years. Harden's playoff failures are a bit more on him, but at the same time, I think that historically he is underrated, and he's certainly underrated this year too. So I'll be cheering for the Sixers. Outside of my bets on other teams, I'll be cheering for the Sixers. But let's talk about baseball.
Yeah.
Pivot to baseball from James Harden to Dylan Cease and Justin Verlander and co. So let's hit Cy Young and MVP. Start off with Cy Young. At the moment, Jacob deGrom is the favorite at plus 500. He's already dealing with a little niggling injury because that's what Jacob deGrom deals with, but doesn't look like it's too serious. Then Garrett Cole, plus 550. Dylan Cease, who came second last season, plus 850. Carlos Rodon, the newest Yankees, 10-1. And then Manoah, Bieber, Ohtani, McClanahan, and co. Is there anyone who piques your interest in this market, Drew?
I have not bet into this market, and I would almost certainly look down the board. I do not think fair price for the guys at the top at all for deGrom or Garrett Cole. It's this is a bet against the favorites type of situation. I don't have the answers, but I think where we kind of broke down the NL, and I thought we made a lot of very valid points about sort of the different strengths between the between the divisions in general. The very competitive nature, particularly of the NL West. The AL to me looks pretty flat earth outside of the AL Central, which is also still very, very weak. The AL East, I would expect that the Rays are in the mix with the Yankees for that that title. I think the Orioles are going to be a heck of a lot better than people think, just based on the that youth continuing to develop and the way that the stewards of that franchise have had a vision for kind of really being competitive for the next 3 seasons here, and then surely the investments that the Red Sox made will bear some fruit. They'll be better than last year. So, there's going to be at least 4 competitive teams, in my opinion, probably all 5 really in the AL East. And then the AL West looks like you have truly 4 competitive teams with only the A's being not in the mix. So I could, I could realistically kind of say that there's going to be, one of those 9 is going to really surprise us. And I think it's not going to be the Yankees, and Garrett Cole therefore gets ruled out. It's probably not going to be the Rangers. And Jacob deGrom is a guy that is an injury waiting to happen. So will not be investing any money in him for the balance of the season. So I'm looking down the board here. And I know you don't necessarily have to have winning to be the Cy Young champion, as as Sandy showed us last year on the Marlins, but at the same time, it surely helps. And I would look for someone interesting on a Mariners squad, and or maybe an Angels. Who stands out to you in this market?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think the two, there's not a lot of appealing long shots, high upside long shots like there are in the NL with guys like, Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo we talked about, who are both in the 100-1 range. In the AL, there's not as many guys who leap out. I think the 2 guys who I'll be watching most closely at the start of the season are 2 guys whose prices would be a lot shorter, if not for health, which is being baked in, and that's deGrom and Shane McClanahan, where those guys, McClanahan would be much closer. He would be the same price as Cease, basically, if he didn't have these concerns about his health. And deGrom, if you told me deGrom was going to pitch 190 innings, then I would say that he should be like plus 150 to win Cy Young, because he's the best pitcher by distance. It's just that he just hasn't been healthy. Last year, I think it went a little bit under the radar because he didn't pitch that much. But when he came back, he was just Jacob deGrom, Cy Young winner. He was just the same guy that he always is. And so going heavy in on Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year, taught me that when you change environments, you don't necessarily bring your same dominance with you.
That's a great point.
And there might be a bit of an adjustment for him going up against American League teams much more regularly, going up against the AL West, pitching in a new park and all of that. But deGrom, he is the best pitcher. And if he's healthy the first month of the season and the market doesn't shorten him accordingly, then he might be the bet. But no huge appealing long shots in this market at the moment. But certainly, the top guys, Alek Manoah is the equal 4th favorite for Cy Young. Like, it's not that intimidating of a market. So I think that a long shot like Robbie Ray was available at 100-1 when he won Cy Young in the AL a couple of years ago. So certainly one to monitor. And as a long shot emerges, we'll be sure to touch on it here. Let's talk about MVP, which was certainly the most captivating market in the AL and really in all of baseball last season, as Ohtani and Judge went head to head. They are the favorites again this year for AL MVP. Ohtani is plus 200. Judge is plus 450. And then it's Trout, Rodriguez, Alvarez, Vladdy, and co following. I think this market, it just really hinges on your handicap of how likely is Shohei Ohtani to win if he's healthy, and then how likely is it that he stays healthy, which is, not a guarantee, but certainly a pretty heavy favorite. And I just think Ohtani, until further notice, should start every season like slightly above even money to win MVP. When you think about it, took last year a guy hitting 62 home runs for the New York Yankees to win MVP, and there were still people saying that Ohtani should have won. And I don't think Ohtani, the past 2 years, this is 2 years that he's done it. This is just his baseline now. So I think that he is rightfully the favorite. Do you think that Ohtani is vulnerable at all, or do you just think it's his award to lose unless he gets hurt?
I don't think he's vulnerable. I think 2-1 is a bettable price. I'm out on the Aaron Judge experience. I think there was probably a lot at play in terms of just, it was a very special season that's not replicable. And if he comes in, with any kind of, just even a month of like less impressive output from a home run standpoint, then all of a sudden his case is in deep trouble. Similarly, Mike Trout, I don't know that we are ever going to see him make it through a season without kind of an extended absence where he just, takes a bite out of what his ultimate, production looks like. And Ohtani, what he did last year was extremely impressive. Of course, there was a case to be made that he probably should have won it over Judge. I thought even with Judge getting all those home runs, but 2-1, I think is a bettable number. That goes one direction, in my opinion. I think the Angels overall are going to be a lot more competitive than people think. And I think that just adds a little bit of fuel to that fire. So you're right that health is always a question mark just because of what they're asking him to do, how often he's out there. But, I think in terms of skill set, he should be in the plus 150 range. So 2-1, I think, is fair to put in pocket and let that get shorter. And then maybe you play a little defense around, June or the All-Star break, depending on, what the standings look like with the rest of the AL.
Yep. Ohtani's the only bet to make. I probably wouldn't bet the plus 200 now. I agree that it's a good price. And if you want to bet that, that's fine. It's just that there's probably more scope for the market to overreact to a bad start early on, or for him to start off cold or whatever, and to be able to get a better price potentially, as opposed to, it's difficult for the market to really shorten a guy who's plus 200 in April. So, but he's definitely the guy anchoring this market. Looks like we have comment on a couple long shots in the market. Randy Mitchell took some Rushman and Franco at 50-1. I like both of those bets, particularly Rushman. And he was the guy I was going to bring up where, you look what Adley Rushman did last year. He had 5.3 Fangraphs WAR in 113 games as a rookie. He's 24 years old. I'm not sure if you've seen the photos, Drew, but he's jacked coming in this season, which I'm not sure what that means necessarily. But, Fangraphs is always going to be relatively conservative with their projections, and they're not going to project phenoms or greatest players of their generation just kind of immediately leaping into 9 WAR status or anything. But Zips has got him projected for almost 6 WAR, and it doesn't take a lot for him to get to say 25 plus homers, elite defense, elite plate discipline on an Orioles team that makes the playoffs. And to your point earlier, making the playoffs doesn't really matter for Cy Young. It might be a small tiebreak if it's close in a race, but it absolutely matters for MVP. And Adley Rushman, if he leads the Orioles to the playoffs and lifts his power numbers a bit, then I think he could win MVP. So he would definitely be my favorite long shot.
I got to throw some cold water on my Orioles enthusiasm. Like I'm basically in the AL East. I'm against the Yankees at this price. I'm against basically every Yankees type of prop. I'm on the Orioles every which way. Rushman 50-1, if you could find it, is awesome. Awesome play. I think the key for the AL MVP market is the middle class there. Like that tier after Ohtani looks just completely mispriced. Right? It's just a whole bunch of guys with upside and buzz and name recognition, but no real path, I don't think, to just to distinguish themselves. And so, yes, you could definitely, you're in my opinion, you're putting Ohtani in pocket and then looking for some long shots, and 50-1 is probably the price point I'm looking at for a lot of those guys. But I don't have a strong opinion on Franco, but gosh, man, his profile looks pretty good too. I now that I'm looking at it. Tampa Bay, the AL East coming down to Tampa Bay and the Orioles. That makes sense to me, looking at the strength of these rosters and where they are all trending and the age curves and all of this. So, fun way to try to capture a little upside.
Yeah, I don't think it makes any sense that Julio Rodriguez is, just that short as he is at the moment, where checking out his price now, he's plus 700. Like Julio Rodriguez shouldn't be plus 700.
Jordan Alvarez?
Well, I like Alvarez, but I don't think I wouldn't be betting him at his current price either, unless he's going to be playing the outfield every day. The DH penalty is a real thing. But yeah, I mean, I would say that guys like Rushman and Franco should be a lot closer to Rodriguez, and Rodriguez should be a lot longer. But definitely one to monitor. It'll be a more fun market if Shohei gets shelled for 7 runs in his first start, honestly. Otherwise, if it's Shohei wire to wire, it's not going to be super compelling from a betting perspective.
No, that's true. But I think that's why you got to put 2 plus 200 in pocket, because he's going to do some amazing things early in the season. I just count on it. Like, it's going to be wild, and he could get into the minus 200, minus 400 range at a point where then you're aggressively shopping alternatives. That's kind of the arc that I see for this market. So I don't know. You're right. He could get absolutely beat up early. I mean, it's a long season. I think he's realistically, there's no reason for him to push hard early, especially, and risk injuries. So there are avenues where he slips early, but I'm just not seeing it the way that their schedule breaks.
Yeah, and I will say, as someone who was writing out an Aaron Judge 40-1 MVP ticket last year from April, just cheering against Shohei all season was just absolutely terrifying. The man just didn't give an inch.
You caught 40-1 on Judge? Holy
Judge was
smokes.
40-1. Then he wasn't coming off a great couple of years, but it was mainly just health and bad luck. And then, he said he's Aaron Judge. He was 40-1.
Okay,
it was a little insane. So hopefully there's a sequel to that this season. Before we talk about the AL Central, spring training is upon us, Drew, and that means one thing: it's draft season. Get the RotoWorld Baseball Draft Guide today and get all player profiles, rankings, and projections you need to hit your draft out of the park. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com/draft guide to get your draft guide now. The AL Central, Drew's market is a mess, and the way that I approach this market is that basically the Twins were in the plus 300, plus 350 range before they signed Carlos Correa out of nowhere. And Carlos Correa is a 5 to 6 win player, and he's coming in to replace basically 1-win players who are going to be in his spot. So the Twins have upgraded 4 to 5 wins, and they've upgraded 4 to 5 wins at the highest leverage position in terms of making the playoffs, because they've gone from a team that's going to be 79 type of wins to 83, 84. And by signing Correa, I mean, that probably increases their playoff percentages by about 15%. And I don't think the market reacted accordingly in terms of shortening their division prices and pushing out others. They're still plus 240 on PointsBet. I think that's still a bet. I think they should be plus 200. And I think that they should be shorter than the White Sox. Yeah. Still think the Guardians are rightfully the favorite in the division. But I think the Twins should be right behind them. And I'm quite low on the White Sox this season. But what say you?
Yep. I agree with you. I think surely the Twins and the White Sox should be flip-flopped. And then the gap between the Guardians and the Twins is much, much narrower than this market implies. I agreed also that you didn't really see the correct adjustments once Correa became, kind of bona fide. He's going to be a Twin. I think people may have in the back of their heads been like, expecting some injury or suspension or something for, Correa. The way that whole offseason played out for him was very strange. There was a lot of weird rumors. So people may have just kind of kept their powder dry, waiting for, the kind of surety that Correa was going to be an everyday available player for these guys, because it does absolutely swing the division. The AL Central is weak. The Tigers and the Royals are awful. And I think the White Sox, they're gonna threaten for one of the most underachieving teams across the board based on what the win totals look like right now. A lot of the smart folks that I talk to who handicap baseball well from a numerical standpoint think that win total could be off by as much as 10, which is a lot. And if the White Sox, they made a positive change presumably at manager. I think addition by subtraction, maybe, but it still is a team that is lacking at a lot of key areas. Some huge holes in that lineup, and not a lot of pitching to be excited about as you go down the rotation. So, White Sox look like the most fragile, easiest fade on the board, and the Guardians are also overpriced, which I believe they are. I mean, this time last year, Guardians were like third or fourth choice, I believe, in the AL Central, and they exceeded next year because of easy schedule. So I think there may be a little, not recency bias, but just a little bit too much of how achieved last year influencing that price point.
Yeah, I think that the White Sox, I mean, their top end talent is elite. When you look at guys like Cease and Lewis Robert and Tim Anderson and Eloy Jimenez, and they dealt with a lot of injuries last season as well. But the issue is that they've got no depth whatsoever. And if they go down, if they start losing guys, I mean, they're really depending on guys like Michael Kopech and Mike Clevenger, who Mike Clevenger's, he may be dealing with a suspension at some point during the season. Don't know what's going to happen there. He also just looked terrible last year and was unplayable in the playoffs for the Padres. So he contributed to the Phillies running all over them in the NLCS. So, I would be all over fading the White Sox. The Twins, I think, have got really solid depth now. They are not nearly as susceptible to injuries as the White Sox are. I mean, outside of Correa and then Buxton, and you're only really pricing in, you're hoping for 115 games out of Byron Buxton these days. So I think the Twins, I think they are clearly the best. Let's
you said 115. That's a good number for projecting Twins, but if they get more, then the Twins might run away with this division, right? Like,
if Byron Buxton plays 140 games, then he probably wins MVP, and the Twins wrong.
Well, let's not get crazy. 140. I mean,
that seems unlikely. Let's talk AL pennant. The Astros, the defending champs, the favorites, plus 275. Then the Yankees, plus 325. Behind them, I think there are a couple bets to be made actually on the pennant board, and we've talked about a couple of them already. One, I think the Twins, just because their path to win the AL Central is relatively straightforward compared to even teams like the Blue Jays and the Rays. Winning the AL East is much more difficult of a path just to get into the playoffs, and the Twins are 25-1. But my favorite bet on the board is team you brought up, the Los Angeles Angels, at 22-1. And usually the market inflates the Angels because, they got Trout and Ohtani. But I think that there's been a little bit of an overcorrection the other way because of how bad they were last season. But I mean, last season, Trout was injured a lot. Anthony Rendon missed a ton of time. They were just dealing with injuries across the board. They also got extremely unlucky in terms of just their record in close games and their record versus their run differential and their base runs and all that type of thing. And they've quietly added around the edges in ways that typically they haven't been very good at, adding guys like Hunter Renfroe and Brandon Drury and Tyler Anderson. And they've just got a lot of kind of depth and competence around Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, which is still the best starting point in baseball. And I think that this team has a ton of upside if they can get Rendon. Anthony Rendon is only 32 years old. It feels like he's 40. But he's only 32. And if they can get anything out of him, the guy who was, by the way, a top 2 hitter on a team that won the World Series in 2019. Mm-hmm. So I think the team's got a ton of upside, and that's what you're riding at 22-1 to win the AL. There's some 14 to 1 to win the AL West on the Angels out there. Way too big. I think that should be closer to like plus 600. So yeah, I think the Angels are a team to ride with.
Interesting. I am perfectly willing to listen to those arguments. I haven't really thought through how the Angels would look in a playoff series, and obviously the way the current playoff structure is, like the door is wide open if you can just get yourself in. So the idea of the Angels being more alive in an AL market than in the AL West market is very intriguing to me, because the AL West looks pretty competitive. I don't think that minus 220 or whatever the Astros are to win the West is fair at all. I think they should be closer to even odds there. I think the Mariners are, they overachieved a bit last year. I didn't see them make enough improvements in the offseason or really bring up enough youth to really elevate them to where they ought to be in this sort of the fourth choice now to win the American League. And so, yeah, shopping it for some, the Angels, who I make markedly better than the Rangers, leaps and bounds better than the Athletics. So the clear third best team in the West, and a lot closer to the Mariners, who are priced in the 8 to 1 range to win the AL, is amazing. So yeah, taking a long shot in the AL as opposed to just taking them at 9 to 1, 10 to 1, or even if you can find 14 to 1. I think AL pennant price is a little bit better. So I'm with you there. That's a fun way to attack. I would make a case for 12 to 1 Rays. My kind of fabric of what this Rays team matches very, very closely to the team that made the World Series and lost to the Dodgers several years ago. They're, number of guys who have basically missed last year entirely, rejoining the squad, and a lot of depth now all of a sudden, because they had, some of their younger players playing a lot of meaningful baseball last year as they were filling in for injured guys. So, Wander Franco, if he takes a meaningful step forward, and you have a relatively healthy season, this Rays team, I believe, to be as good, if not better, than the Yankees. So, I like Rays to win the AL East. Bet that in the 4 to 1 range, and I like them to win the AL broadly at 12 to 1. You said, or 12 to 1 was the points bet price.
Yep, 12 to 1 on the AL. They might be a little bit better out there, but yeah, I think the A's as well. They're also a team that just always outperforms their projections.
Surely,
because they might be the smartest franchise around, if not the wealthiest. So yeah, generally a good team to ride with, the Tampa Bay Rays. By the way, the Angels are plus 185 on points bet to make the playoffs, which is, as opposed to the White Sox, who are around even money, which is doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, the White Sox have an easier division to get through, but at the same time, I don't think that they're materially more likely, if at all, to make the playoffs than the Angels are. So
I think we got to point out the fact that the only benefit of being in a bad division now is you have a better chance to win that division because of the flattening of the schedule.
Yep.
So the fact that it boosts, in my mind at least, the win totals and the playoff probabilities of the good teams in the AL East and the AL West, more so than it helps the White Sox. White Sox, I think, no playoffs is a great bet. I like Angels, yes, looking at these prices. I like Orioles, yes, looking at these prices. I got to cool off on the Orioles a little bit, though. I don't want to have my heart broken, because I feel like I might be a year early on them. But they were such a great bet last year for just if you were looking for action in the middle of the summer. Like, that team tried so hard. It was great. Those are all fun ways to attack the AL.
Yep, I like it. All right, before we get into some NBA to close out, a reminder to download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. Okay, association. Got some big games tonight. A little thwarted by injuries. The Knicks line at the Wizards has flipped from Knicks +2 to -2, so I suspect Bradley Beal may not be going. And then the Bucks game, where Giannis is listed doubtful, so I wouldn't expect that Giannis is going to play. Only 1.5-point favorites home to the Heat on national television. The game that's most interesting to me, or at least I'll be paying the most attention to, both from a basketball perspective, and I've got a lot riding on these teams going opposite ways, is the Kings at the Clippers. Heroic debut of Russell Westbrook. The Clippers are 6.5-point favorites. The Kings coming off Pretty uninspiring win against the Portland team that rested Damian Lillard and Jeremy Grant because their plane was late, which was quite a nice schedule break for your boy Mike Brown. I'm just getting him in because Damian Lillard couldn't get the plane there in time, so they didn't want to rush Dame and Jeremy Grant in. Do you have any read on Clippers Kings?
I think that's a big number. Inclined to take the Kings at 6.5.
Me too.
I mean, the Clippers should win. Yes, minus 250 seems a little high. I would have made that minus 190 looking at my numbers for them to win the game. So I think those point spreads should be around 5, 6.5. You're getting 1.5 for the Kings. There's been a general over betting of teams. There's been market overreaction to teams on back-to-backs this season generally. And Kings, like you said, didn't really have to lift much of a finger last night to get a very comfortable win against a Blazers team. So this should be a competitive game. Tough to really look at anything about, health-wise about the Kings and have questions, have doubts. Meanwhile, no Zubac here for the Clippers, and I can't believe that might matter, but it might. It's Ross. It might help.
Yeah, less big on the floor, but true. Help them overall.
That's true. So yeah, matchup wise, it should be an interesting opportunity for the Kings to continue to to put pressure on the Pacific. But I mean, I'm staked most heavily on Suns. So is there a way we could have a tie? Probably not.
I'd love the Suns to win. I need the Kings to go down. I'm cheering against the Kings every night, which is really a pretty good place to be long term, cheering against the Kings. It should work out, but at the same time, we're getting towards the end of the season. They've still got a pretty handy lead in that division. So that is one to monitor. I also think the Cavs at +1 against the Hawks with John Collins out. I think that is playable. Anything else that you like on the card?
Houston Rockets, first half money line, +250.
There you go. Houston Rockets.
Yeah, they're going to give you an honest half of basketball.
Okay.
And the Golden State, I get it. Like the Rockets are not going to win this game. They're going to pull some fourth quarter shenanigans like they always do because they have the full on tank mode right now. But the first half lines are anchored with the full game lines, and the Warriors in the state they're in right now should not be 10.5 point favorites to the Rockets. I don't know what is going on with that squad. Kerr does not look like he is engaged at all. The interviews he had last night in LA against the Lakers were just like, this guy did not rest and recuperate over the All-Star break and come in with some, inspired fervor and get this team, ready to play. Draymond Green looks like, I don't know. I don't know. He looks washed. He doesn't look ready for any kind of a playoff run here. So Warriors right now I have rated fairly low in terms of power number. And even though the Rockets would be the second worst team in the NBA, only ahead of the Spurs for me, I still think you can get an honest half of basketball out of them. So that's the only thing that really sticks out to me. I'm treading somewhat lightly in the NBA until Monday just because there's, as you saw last night, some teams came out of All-Star break and they're literally like, okay, time to make a statement. Time to play basketball at a playoff level, while other teams literally are like, yeah, I guess we can play some games. And that's what I felt like the energy level you got from the Warriors last night was against the Lakers. A huge disparity there in terms of level of intensity. So we'll see if they get a win. They probably do because the Rockets will make it happen some way, somehow, conceding 40 points in the fourth quarter to the Warriors. But, I think first half should be pretty competitive there. So +250 is a fun bet.
Yes. Yeah. The 10.5 seems a bit steep for a Warriors team on a back-to-back without Curry and Wiggins. I think what last night and the past couple of weeks have proven about Golden State is that, well, not proven, but at least added credence to the idea that Stephen Curry is the second best player of the past 25 years. He's that good. And when he's out, particularly when you're missing Wiggins as well, who is the third best player on the team, then all of a sudden it gets a little dire. So, they're going to be a tough watch while those two are out. All right, reminder to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks, everyone, watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.